Well, good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, when I got Dave got on to talk about the club that was basically talking about the most likely suspects in the murder of Teresa, the things that they did to Dave to try and get him into the club, and then when he refused to join, the way they forced him out of town, and we hear about his bar manager as suddenly dying, which is very bizarre. If she died of a heart attack, and yet there was pools of blood. Anyway, thought I'd like to share a couple more pages from John Farrak's book, which talks about the sheriff's department, not the specific Kenny Peterson talking about the assassination unit. It would be easier to kill Steve than to frame him, which, of course, means that conversation occurred. And if they're talking about killing Stephen Avery, they could talk about killing anybody, and it wouldn't surprise us eventually to learn that it was somebody within the sheriff's department that didn't actually do the dirty deed themselves, but made sure it got done, made sure that Stephen Avery's visitor on Halloween of 2005 disappeared, and then to end up with remains in his back garden. Anyway, let's find a bit of the. It's once again part of the Wrecking Crew, Chapter 9, Shady Sheriff's Department. It's not the whole chapter. I'll be careful about abusing the author by simply regurgitating whole paragraphs, but 3 or 4 pages, they don't usually mind too much. And it's nothing startling. It does show John Farrak's excellent style of writing, and I think it just paints a picture of the sheriff's department that I think we all know and understand. Anyway, let's pop it up. So. Just a fraction too big. Okay, Chapter 9, Shady Department. Where there are shuttered factories and boarded up businesses, one of the most desirable jobs in an economically depressed blue-collar area is one that provides a shiny badge, a holster, and a loaded gun. A fear factor and an intimidating law enforcement presence often keeps the locals in check and cast an eye of suspicion on the community's outsiders, notably minorities. In communities like this, a job as a county sheriff deputy means power and prestige. These jobs are hard to come by. Positions in full-time law enforcement carry generous fringe benefits, enormous job security, and generous taxpayer-funded retirement pensions that most of the tax-paying public won't have in their line of work. Work in the public sector, particularly in law enforcement, and you tend to make above average wages. Usually there's a steady flow of overtime pay and built-in annual pay raises that most people in the private sector would envy. Being a sheriff's deputy in a small town means something. It means clout. It makes you somebody. You are given enormous power to mess with somebody's civil rights and freedoms. Want to harass somebody? Want to make somebody's life miserable? Want to intimidate someone? Want to rough someone up? Most cops who operate on the dark side of the law know what they can get away with. Fortunately, most people in law enforcement are honorable, righteous, and truly want to do the public's good. They are our true public servants, and they try hard to keep our communities safe. For them, we owe a debt of gratitude. But not all cops are cut from the same cloth, and that's just as true in Wisconsin. Around northeastern Wisconsin, the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department gained notoriety on a number of cases involving strong suspicions of a police cover-up. Upon taking office in January 2007, Sheriff Rob Herman promoted his younger brother Todd to the position of Deputy Inspector of Operations, third in command of the entire 60-officer department. In effect, the sheriff put his little brother into one of the best paid positions and most powerful roles in all of county government. During Rob Herman's tenure as sheriff, his undersheriff remained Greg Shetter. Shetter and the Herman brothers all grew up together in southern Manitowoc County. In fact, Shetter happened to be one of the groomsmen at Todd Herman's 1993 wedding, along with the sheriff himself. Wouldn't it be nice to have your wedding party doing your performance reviews, setting your salaries and pay rises, especially in a county government job? As for Shetter, he was sandwiched in the middle of both Herman brothers in the upper administration. He was the boss of one and answered to the other. This was small-town cronyism at its finest, and this was the way the political movers and shakers of Manitowoc County preferred to run their downtown sheriff's office. The Manitowoc Sheriff's Office did not have an internal affairs unit for citizens to bring their complaints about corruption or abuse of power involving the sheriff's deputies. Instead, complaints from the citizenry were funneled to Shetter, and he decided what complaints were legitimate and which ones to dismiss. The opportunity to wear the brown uniform and the shiny star as a Manitowoc County Sheriff's Deputy was historically based on who you knew, not what you knew. Deputy candidates who may have been highly qualified but failed to have an inside connection were often part of the reject pile. Their job application materials often collected dust, and they would need to look elsewhere to pursue a career in law enforcement. As far as the top of the administration was concerned, Sheriff Rob Herman and Under Sheriff Greg Shetter were afforded a long-standing generous perk that was off limits to virtually all other county government employees. They got a yearly fuel stipend to the tune of nearly $10,000 each just to drive to and from their office desk jobs in downtown Manitowoc. The generous stipend approved by the Manitowoc County Board of Supervisors came in addition to their annual salaries in the neighbourhood of $100,000, all for managing a mostly rural sheriff's office, rarely ever handling serious crimes such as rapes, kidnappings, bank robberies, and murders. Most of the serious offences tended to occur within the jurisdiction of the Manitowoc Police Department, a city police agency that strived to hire more qualified police officers. The city department was regarded as being far more professional, ethical, and accountable to the residents, but it was often dragged down and sullied because it shared the same name as the county sheriff's office. For those who desired to climb the ladder within the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office, there were two easy ways to get there. One was to brown nose your way to the top. The other was to have dirt on your superiors. A number of employees who climbed to the top of the troubled department were skilled at both. Back in the 1970s, Bob Herman, president of Cleveland Auto Sales and Salvage, helped elect a mediocre city cop in his 30s named Tom Kusurek as the new sheriff of Manitowoc County. In 1978, Kusurek garnered the most votes in a crowded five-man political primary that ousted the incumbent sheriff. By all accounts, Bob Herman was an all-round likable fellow. He had recently retired from his position as a Manitowoc County traffic patrolman. On the other hand, Kusurek brought few redeeming qualities to the sheriff's office. Yet he would hold down the fort for the next 22 years, retiring in 2001 so he could start collecting his government pension as he went to work in Manitowoc's non-profit sector as a well-paid executive director of the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization. As sheriff, Kusurek's legacy is that his name is synonymous with crookedness and corruption. Along the way, Kasurik made sure to mold a number of disciples within his sheriff's office. After all, he wanted some of the minions to follow in his footsteps and uphold his legacy. Incidentally, just 5 days before Teresa vanished, after visiting Avery Road, recently retired chief investigator of Mantrock County, Jean the Pencil Couchet, was compelled to give a sworn deposition at a Manitowoc law office. During that late October afternoon, Kasurik was asked to recall the circumstances of his demotion by Sheriff Kasurik during the 1980s. Couchet had been the undersheriff at one time, second in command of the entire agency, but then, out of nowhere, Kasurik removed him from the post. I asked him, "Why did you do this?" Couchet testified, and he said, "Because I lacked tact." Couchet remembered his 2-decade-old conversation with Kasurik like it happened yesterday. I said, "Tom, tact on your department was the ability to smile at someone's face while you stabbed them in the back." I don't think he responded. Couchet smirked. So his deposition was indeed October the 26th, 2005. So as I say, that's officially is the final part. We've looked at, I would say, most of the suspects. Some people mention a fellow with a Spanish name or Mexican name, and the German. And interestingly, when I asked Jerome about his thoughts on the suspects, he immediately said that, as far as he was concerned, one of the most important things of all is that whoever murdered Teresa, he felt would have very good access to the salvage yard. So, was it the fact that our second top suspects, well, let's really make them all equal. The Sheriff's Department, i.e. Tom Kasurik, obviously, we hear, don't we, Ken Kratz in closing arguments saying, you know, if you have to believe that your Sheriff's Department murdered Teresa Halbach. And that was absolutely brilliant, because that's exactly, I remember shouting at the TV at the time, that is exactly what's happened. Yes, you do have to believe that. And of course, we get to the fact that in the initial vote, 7-4, remember there was only 11 jury members because Rick Marler was allowed to leave the process. Again, under somewhat strange circumstances. Was it a setup? But the initial vote, 7-4, so 7 people, according to Ken Kratz's closing argument, 7 of them thought, yes, the Sheriff's Department had murdered Teresa. Anyway, like I said, did they pull the trigger, or did they bludgeon her to death with a blunt object? Probably not. Probably that's where, as I say, somebody who knew when Teresa was leaving, or had set something up to meet her somewhere on one of these hustle shots. I mean, we know that Bobby left around about 30 seconds. What if he didn't catch Teresa up? What if she was driving quite fast and didn't catch her? He didn't catch her up at all. But it didn't really matter, because it was already set up that they were going to ambush her in Cross Road, which certainly does seem to be the place of execution of Teresa, on the orders of the Sheriff's Department, who, as we saw in just those four paragraphs, 4 pages, Tom Kasurik, renowned for corruption and shady dealings, the Shady Department. Yeah, it wasn't just a sudden thing that they found themselves in trouble with Stephen Avery and had to come up with a solution. They've been covering up corruption for many years. Okay, I think that will do for the suspects. Although obviously we still get plenty of people commenting and adding their own observations, which is great. But I think we'll move on to the fall of Ken Kratz, the final decision by the, I think it was the OLR or the Supreme Court. Anyway, it's William Griesbach that says some very interesting things about Ken Kratz. Anyway, we'll catch you all soon. Take care. Bye for now.